Today's video is brought to you by Aaron Clary's Bachelor Pad Economics. From dating to what to major in to purchasing a home to starting a business to children and even wife training. Bachelor Pad Economics is the wisdom you wish the father you never had gave you. This video is also brought to you by Comics Elite. For the elite and exclusive variant covers, taking part in live Facebook auctions, poll lists, and signature opportunities, check out comicselite.com. And if you'd like to advertise on this channel and reach millions of eyes a month, email us at worldclassbs@mail.com. Now onto the video.
The following is a world-class Bullshitters exclusive.
I'm no expert on Game of Thrones, but I know a lot about how popular culture works. And if there's one constant in popular culture, it's you're only as good as your last performance. Looking in from the outside, I'm seeing a swell of disappointment I haven't seen since Star Wars The Last Jedi. And again, while I'm not a Game of Thrones fan, I can sympathize with my fellow fans watching something you love die a horrible death because of hack writers. Game of Thrones is ending next week, and I'm not going to watch, but what I am watching is what comes next from the duo behind the scenes, Benioff and Weiss. For years, I've heard nothing but praise from friends and family when discussing Game of Thrones, so when the rumor that the writers from Game of Thrones were helming a Star Wars trilogy, I was excited. This was after the disappointment that was the cultural garbage dump known as The Last Jedi, so I needed a pick-me-up. As stupid announcements, cartoons, and the like constantly came from the Star Wars camp, I was holding on to the Game of Thrones guys trilogy because of what I'd heard from the fans about the series. Then, this season happened, and I'm concerned. When I began writing this video, it was all speculation as to what the next Star Wars film would be. But now it's official. Benioff and Weiss meet Star Wars. Slashfilm had this to say: Star Wars film from Game of Thrones showrunners confirmed to follow The Rise of Skywalker. It's official! The next Star Wars film following The Rise of Skywalker will come from the Game of Thrones showrunners David Benioff and D.B. Weiss. Benioff and Weiss were already announced as being involved with the new Star Wars trilogy outside of the Skywalker saga, but it wasn't clear which series would come next, the one from Benioff and Weiss or the one from Rian Johnson. Now we know. During today's Moffat-Nathanson Media and Communications Summit, Walt Disney Company Chairman Bob Iger confirmed that David Benioff and D.B. Weiss would be handling the next Star Wars film, due in 2022. Iger confirmed the news while discussing the upcoming break the franchise is taking after The Rise of Skywalker. I haven't seen Episode 9 yet, but I'm confident, based on the pieces that I've seen and the script that I've read, that it's going to be extremely popular. But we felt that it would be smart of us to take a bit of a hiatus while we figure out what's next. Now, we're not going to wait until Episode 9 is released and then start figuring it out. We're actually hard at work doing that already. The conclusion that we reached was 3 years was the proper amount of time, not only to take a breather and reset, but to really gear up for the next film's release. We did a deal with David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, who are famous for Game of Thrones, and the next movie we release will be theirs, and we're not saying anything more about that. It was recently revealed that after The Rise of Skywalker opens in December, Star Wars will be taking a bit of a break from the big screen. Per that announcement, with Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker bringing the original Skywalker saga to its conclusion, 3 new, as yet untitled Star Wars movies will be released on the pre-Christmas weekend every other year, beginning in 2022. 4 forthcoming Avatar films, expanding the vibrant world of Pandora, will release on pre-Christmas every weekend every other year beginning 2021. In the summer of 1977, we traveled to a galaxy far, far away, and we've been dreaming of it ever since. We are honored by the opportunity, a little terrified by the responsibility, and so excited to get started as soon as the final season of Game of Thrones is complete, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss said in a joint statement when the news of them joining the Star Wars universe was first announced. There are no specific details about what the Benioff and Weiss trilogy will be about. We just know that it will exist outside of the soon-to-be-concluded Skywalker saga. It's also not clear if all 3 entries in the Benioff and Weiss trilogy will come in a row, or if Disney will alternate between the Benioff and Weiss trilogy and the Rian Johnson trilogy. This news will no doubt cause some feelings. Until recently, Benioff and Weiss seemed to be on top of the world due to the success of Game of Thrones, but this final season of Game of Thrones has proven to be more divisive than I think anyone guessed. And now some fans might be weary about their involvement with Star Wars. That said, it's worth noting the duo are only writing and producing the trilogy, and someone else will be directing. 3 different directors might handle the trilogy as a whole. In fact, we'll see. I gotta tell you, it's really refreshing to hear an Access Media website be honest about the recent fan response to Game of Thrones. And they don't even need to accuse 50% of the audience of being sexist. Though that joke of a website, the Mary Sue, is. What we don't get is official confirmation about Rian Johnson's trilogy. But the writing seems to be on the wall for the fate of our orbular-headed friends' films. They're not happening. Sometimes what's not said is more important than what is. Why would Disney release alternating trilogies every other year? That is one of, if not the most confusing way to release a Star Wars film. You think Solo did poorly? Imagine the audience looking for the follow-up to a Benioff and Weiss film, only to get a Rian Johnson film. Talk about the definition of Johnsoning it. The Game of Thrones outrage seems to be spreading far and wide. Great channels like Nerdrotic are seeing record viewing numbers for live shows after Game of Thrones episodes, and Game of Thrones is the talk of Twitter. Looking from the outside in, I do sympathize, as I've stated earlier, and apparently I'm not alone in my concern either. In my research for another video, I came across this article from Fansided, and it's problematic. I'm just kidding, I hate that word. The Last Dragon, what the end of Game of Thrones tells us about the future of Star Wars. After Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi came out in 2017, social media regarding Star Wars became, shall we say, somewhat controversial. The film seemed to polarize its viewers into two camps despite being a huge box office success and US home video success. Online, things were heated across various social media outlets, with some rather ugly comments driving some stars away from fan interaction. Star Wars fans may have nothing on fans of the HBO show Game of Thrones. The fantasy show is in its 8th and final season, and reaction to the direction the show is taking as it approaches the end has its own share of heated responses, from comments about character assassination to the fans being just disappointed in what happened. Each episode of this final season seems to have engendered stronger responses from people who think the showrunners, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, either don't understand the source material, have paced the story oddly, or are making characters meant to be heroes act decidedly unheroic. Sounds a bit familiar if anyone kept up with the reactions to The Last Jedi. It becomes more relevant considering that Benioff and Weiss are working on a new series of Star Wars films. The similarities and complaints seem to center around one particular truth. Some fans did not get what they wanted. Many The Last Jedi complaints centered around Luke Skywalker not playing a more traditional fantasy hero role in the film, as there was an expectation that he would walk out with a laser sword and face down the whole First Order. When Snoke is presented as the big bad and instead proves to be just a catalyst for the rise of Kylo Ren as the villain, some audience members felt it was a bait and switch. Very similar complaints are all along social media right now, as characters expected to be heroes are proving to be less than that, and characters who are on redemptive arcs are instead choosing to revert to their old ways. Whether one likes this direction, it's something that defies the expectations the audience has come to have from formula and narrative rules and tropes. Both The Last Jedi and Game of Thrones have done that, broken from expectations and norm to tell their stories while not necessarily giving members of the audience what they wanted. With the upcoming slate of Disney, therefore Star Wars films announced, and knowing Benioff and Weiss are on deck to create new material, there is bound to be some apprehension regarding what they will do given the controversy surrounding the end of Game of Thrones. Audiences should expect, however, that whatever they will get will probably have a lot in common with The Last Jedi as its defiance of expectation. Depending on your opinion of The Last Jedi or Game of Thrones, this could be very good news or very bad. While I'm not into Game of Thrones, everything has all of a sudden come into perspective, and I have a lot of sympathy for all of you. There's nothing worse than to watch your favorite character go out like a punk and then be told it's your fault that it's bad. We've lived it through Star Wars, and I'm afraid we're going to live it again, because as of next week, Game of Thrones is over. There are no more episodes, no spin-offs, no animated series that targets the next generation, nothing. Game of Thrones is effectively finished, and it's leaving a bad taste in people's mouths, and that's why I'm afraid for Star Wars. If I'm being honest, I don't think Star Wars can handle another Last Jedi moment. Analysts will tell you that the strength of the Star Wars brand is at an all-time high, and it's the fans who are toxic. Common sense tell you the opposite is true. Why else would there be a quick retreat back to the original trilogy on store shelves? Hell, the retreat is so severe they've gone back to selling retro figures from the 70s. That last part is actually pretty cool, but you get my point. They're relying on the past again because the present version sucks. That's why you get Lando in Episode 9, milking that nostalgic land. With Benioff and Weiss, you're traveling into unknown territory. Some would say that's just what Star Wars needs, and I'd agree. But from what I've heard, once they stopped adapting source material, Game of Thrones kinda sucks. I'm not alone in my thinking either. A former enemy, turned ally, Scott Mendelson, has recently spoken out in favor of... Nope, can't even do it. Not even once. Scott Mendelson is not our friend, just check out what he had to say. Now I'm paraphrasing here, but the entire thing will be linked in the description below. Disney could lose a box office battle between Star Wars and Aquaman 2. As we see whether Avengers Endgame has enough gas in the tank to muscle past the unadjusted $2.788 billion global cume of James Cameron's Avatar, we should note that it's not as surefire a prospect as I presumed last week. The drop this weekend, especially overseas, was harsh, to say the least, and if some of that is due to Detective Pikachu providing some competition, then we should again note that Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker won't have that issue. While Star Wars 7 opens 1 week after Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle and concurrently with Cats, the only post-debut Christmas weekend competition will be Blue Sky's Spies in Disguise, which, since Disney now owns Fox, is a Walt Disney release. Quick side note, I think he meant to say Episode 9, and the sequel to Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle. So Scott, buddy, proofreading is your friend. Conversely, box office competition for Avengers Endgame has just begun. John Wick Chapter 3, Aladdin, Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and The Secret Life of Pets 2 are all opening consecutively along A Dog's Journey, Brightburn, Rocketman, and Dark Phoenix. So, presuming it works for general audiences, if Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker ends up closer to 700 million domestic than 600 million domestic, its holiday release date and post-feature competition will be a big reason why. All of this makes it all the more curious that Walt Disney went and slotted the next Star Wars movie, whatever shape that film takes, on December 16th, 2022. That's 3 years after The Rise of Skywalker, but it's also the same day as DC Films and Warner Bros. Aquaman 2. Jason Momoa claims they have a story ready for the next James Wan-directed flick, and the presumption is that Warner Bros. Was waiting 4 years for James Cameron's Avatar sequel, but now Avatar 2 will open in December 2021, while Avatar 3 will open in December 2023. Disney will be alternating Star Wars movies and Avatar chapters from 2021 to 2027. Jesus. Presuming humanity survives that long, Scott, I'm with you there. Conventional wisdom suggests that Aquaman 2 would get the hell out of Dodge and either try like hell to be ready for December 2020, or just move somewhere else on the calendar, and sacrifice those sweet, sweet Christmas to New Year's legs. But what if Warner Bros. Calls Disney's bluff and stays put? There are a couple of points that may yet put Aquaman 2 at an advantage over the next Star Wars movie. First, Aquaman 2 will feature the cast and crew behind the well-liked Aquaman, with an implicit promise to deliver more larger-than-life undersea action fantasy. Conversely, whether courtesy of Rian Johnson or the Game of Thrones dudes, David Weiss and D.B. Benohoff, the next Star Wars film will be far more of a new thing, within the Star Wars brand not yet intertwined with the Skywalker Solo saga that made up the 9 Star Wars episodes, as well as Rogue One and Solo. Absent the explicit connection to A New Hope, we don't know if this new Star Wars saga will play closer to Alita Battle Angel than Rogue One. Since Disney dated the new Star Wars movie on December 16th, 2 months after Warner Bros. Slated James Wan's Aquaman sequel, the goal is either to provoke DC Films to change dates or hope they can both coexist. And on one hand, they can arguably coexist. On the other hand, this plays like a reversal of the DCEU-MCU matchup from 2016. Back then, Warner Bros. Tossed Batman v Superman into Marvel's summer kickoff date, only to turn tail and flee when Marvel announced that the untitled film was the third Captain America. The implicit message was Marvel would be willing to let one of their sequels to one of their standalone franchises take a hit via a head-to-head showdown, if that meant that Warner Bros. Must score DC Comics sequel would also take a hit. 5 years later, the shoe is on the other foot. While Warner Bros. Would prefer that a Star Wars movie not cut into Aquaman 2's global success, Aquaman 2 is just one sequel to a standalone franchise in the DC Films property. Conversely, if this new Star Wars movie stumbles out of the gate, partially thanks to competition from an anticipated sequel to a much-liked franchise starter, then the theatrical Star Wars franchise, one without the direct ties to the Skywalker episode, is essentially dead in the water. The fact that we're even having this discussion about Star Wars not being able to top Aquaman 2 is a refreshing one for fans still reeling from The Last Jedi. It's been said across the fandom menace, The Last Jedi hurt Star Wars badly, and Lucasfilm kept it going. Now I know Scott likes to use other reasons, and for once they're sound, mostly, but these studios that make big announcements so far in advance really fail to take into account other factors that could ruin their future products. Remember when Kathleen Kennedy hired Lord and Miller to helm Solo, only to come in and fire them with a mostly completed film? Ron Howard swooped in and the film was a dud. We were all told that Rian Johnson was working on his own trilogy. We were also told that Star Wars was taking a break. You get the point. They don't know what they're doing out there in Hollywood, especially at Disney. As the book closes on Game of Thrones and people are left wondering what happened, remember that this level of quality is coming to Star Wars. I hate to leave you on such a dour note, but that's all she wrote as of now. If the final episode blows people away, will it be enough to bring a spark of excitement back to Star Wars? Who knows? John Campion knows. Let's take a quick moment to listen to the Master of None chime in on the Game of Thrones situation. This is what John had to post on social media. If Twitter and Game of Thrones fans have been around when Return of the Jedi came out. Jeffy the Man 374. Yes, Jeff is the man. Lando blows up the Death Star? Totally undeserved. He's only been a hero in this one movie, and they're just handing him blowing up the Death Star? Bad writing. John, Wedge helped, and he was there from the Battle of Yavin. Big Dick 42 says, totally wasted Luke. What was the point of following him since the first film? He doesn't get to kill Vader. He doesn't get to kill the Emperor. He doesn't kill Jabba. He doesn't kill Boba Fett. They spit on a great character and don't care about the fans. Well, John, Star Wars was about Luke becoming a Jedi, and once Vader was defeated, a Jedi he became. It would help if you actually watch these movies. Sexmaster69 says, all Darth Vader has done is kill fools and been a total badass, and all of a sudden he turns on the Emperor out of nowhere? Totally inconsistent. The writers don't understand Vader at all. Bad writing. Do these guys even understand Star Wars? Do you even understand English, John? Your stupid sentence structure aside, the redemption arc is what Darth Vader was all about. I guess, again, you didn't watch Return of the Jedi. And finally, Love My Atari says, "You gotta be kidding me. The Emperor dies by falling down a well? Are you fucking kidding me? He's the ruler of the universe, the ultimate threat in the galaxy, and the driving villain of the saga, and you kill him off by having someone sneak up behind him and throw him down a well? Not even a fight? Bad writing. They hate the fans." John, if this is your attempt at humor, please stick to your day job of brown-nosing. You're good at that. Before we go, let's give a quick shout out to George Lucas. It's his birthday as of this recording, and as C-3PO says, thank the maker. When George Lucas was in charge, Star Wars was never in such a state of disarray, but thanks to the imperious forces of Disney, that's all changed. Hopefully someone can stop this ever-growing threat. Shit. So that's it for today, folks, and talk about bad timing. Just as Game of Thrones is on the decline in the hearts and minds of millions of fans, hey guys, it's official, they're making more Star Wars movies, and guess who's helming them? Well, the guys from Game of Thrones are behind the scenes. Imagine how you could make these announcements worse. Well, you could make Rian Johnson the director, and that would make no one happy. Rian Johnson is no one's friend. If he was an ice cream flavor, well, you've seen Wayne's World, you know the joke. But if I can be serious for a moment, folks, I may not be a Game of Thrones fan, but I'm in a place where I'm not going to rip on it because I'm not into it, but you are. What I will say is I feel sorry for you to have to watch one of your favorite things die the horrible death that Star Wars died. Now, it wouldn't be 2019 if we didn't have the King of Shills coming out to defend these decisions, but you know what? He's got to like everything in the favor of corporate interests, and that is why he has no respect among the fans. That is why the Fandom Menace is growing the way it has been. Again, another big shout out to our buddy Gary at Nerdrotic. Dude has gained thousands and thousands of subscribers over his Game of Thrones coverage and his Star Trek Discovery coverage. And if you're listening to this video and you haven't found him, well, do me a favor, do yourself a favor, and go subscribe to his channel because it is excellent content that I can't get enough of. But most importantly, I want to know what you guys think. Are you, one, a Game of Thrones fan that is disappointed with the direction the series has taken towards the end, and does that reflect your feelings towards Star Wars? Whatever they may be, let me know down in the comments below, and I would love to read them, and we'll have a discussion on a later live stream. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up on your way out, and make sure you're subscribed to the little bell notification. We've had a lot of success this month, and we've also had a lot of success this year. We're getting to a point where this year alone we've gained almost 50,000 subscribers, so I'd like to say thank you to everyone who's new, thank you to everyone who's stuck with us since the beginning, and get excited because we've got all kinds of great stuff. If you want more of us and you can't wait, well, go back and watch one of our old videos. But if you want exclusive stuff not here on YouTube, join our Patreon page. $1 a month goes a long way, but $5, which is only 17 cents a day, goes even further. And that is where you start to get some great stuff. Besides the bonus podcast, you get commentaries, and you might be getting something really soon from me about our favorite web-headed superhero. But that's just something I heard. Don't tell anybody else about that. It's just between us. But if you can't do that, get involved with the Fandom Menace, check out our channels, and subscribe to the World Class Bullshitters official fan page. It's a great community, a lot of fun, and if you want to talk about geek culture, nerd culture, whatever the hell you want to call it, pop culture, 24/7, this is where you want to be. It's the premier place on Facebook when they're not accidentally flagging a post from a picture of Cesar Romero and saying it's got sexual content in it. But that's it for me today. I gotta get going. Folks, thank you for watching. This has been a hell of a year, and let's just hope that Star Wars... what can we hope for? It's already in the toilet. So as always, folks, go out into the world and be excellent to each other.